Have you ever really taken the time to think about what it means to have an abortion?
Yeah.
But yes.
Where it is confirmed by doctors that the mother will in fact pass away if this child is not aborted.
Yeah, then we would all say that she should be allowed to terminate the pregnancy.
Remove them.
Okay, so when the caption says abortion is wrong and everyone knows it, that only applies to the ones you don't agree with?
Yes.
Yes, girl. Me and you about to turn it up.
Elective abortion.
Okay. And what in your terms is elective abortion?
Anything other than she's going to die if you don't do it.
Will they die?
Okay, so that includes children that have been raped.
This is no time to beat around the bush.
Yes.
You don't beat around the bush, do you?
Okay. So you were talking about earlier what the statistics is for the children that, the maternal death rate, right? So for children under the age of 18, statistically, it is much higher. It's actually closer to 65 people per 100,000 people, and that's actually a very big number. Does that matter to you?
Sounds like they're much more likely to fall under the medical necessity exception.
Look, this is a medical emergency.
So with that said, do you think that it is morally just to force these children who have a statistically very high chance of dying to give birth against their will if they have been raped?
It's becoming more dangerous. It's not just statistics.
What do you mean against their will?
Because a child never chooses to be raped and give birth. A 16-year-old
Does
little
a child
girl.
choose to have sex in the first place?
I'm talking about assault. Stay with me here. Stay with me here.
Stay with me. Stay with me.
So yeah, I'm confused about, like, what are you saying here? Are you insinuating that in some circumstances a child can consent to having sex?
Never. That's my point.
Okay, so then you're saying in all circumstances where a child is pregnant, this should apply?
Absolutely.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
100%.
great. So we agree that they can't consent to having sex. Then how would they be choosing whether or not they have the abortion?
If they
What do? Get an abortion?
can't consent to have sex, you think they consent to push a living being out of their vaginal canal. Is that what you're implying?
You think that they can consent to killing their child?
No. Now you're cherry picking, my love.
No, I'm asking you. I'm asking you the question.
If they didn't consent to being SA'd, and any child that has sex with an adult is ultimately, by law, SA'd, correct?
Sure, we agree.
We agree for once. Good.
And how is it okay for them to somehow consent to birthing this child that they didn't sign up for or didn't ask for?
I didn't say that they're consenting to either.
Listen, woman.
I didn't say they're consenting to either. My question for you is, how are they consenting to having the abortion?
There must be consent.
How are they consenting to having the abortion?
Yes.
Please note, female is below the legal age of consent.
So that is, again, where the whole pro-choice argument comes into play, because if a child who was SA'd decides that they want to birth that child, God forbid, I mean, I think it's awful, but if they want it, that is their choice, right? Are we tracking?
Please note, female is below the legal age of consent.
So you think a child can consent to giving birth?
Please note, female is below the legal age of consent.
That's what you just said, is it not?
No, I said that they can't consent either way to either of those things, but you're saying that they can choose to either have the abortion, they can consent to having the abortion, or they can consent to giving birth. Is that your position?
Please note, female is below the legal age of consent.
I mean, legally and medically, coming from a medical professional,
For the record, I work in an abortion clinic.
children cannot consent to anything under the age of 18. It's their parents' or guardian's decision, so...
Please, please, please have your parents sign these and return them as soon as possible.
Well, that's why I'm asking you the question. It seems strange to me that you're saying they can't consent to the initial act that caused them to get pregnant, but somehow now they're able to consent to whether or not they have an abortion. That doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't make sense.
We're literally talking about grape here. But ultimately, again...
What part of this do you not understand?
I understand all of it. I'm just not understanding where your mindset is at, because it's
Okay, so then if you agree that they can't consent to any of these things, the initial act or having the abortion or giving birth, who's choosing whether or not they have the abortion?
Ultimately, their parent or their guardian.
Please, please, please have your parents sign these.
Okay, so you are in favor of forced abortion or forced birth?
Do you find it odd, your predicament?
No, I'm in favor of pro-choice.
Please note, female is below the legal age of consent.
Whatever
Well,
this
no, because
family's specific
you're
needs
saying
are.
that it's up to, but you're saying that it's not up to the pregnant person. It's now up to the parent to decide whether or not they continue the pregnancy or get an abortion. So you're okay with the parent forcing them to do one or the other?
Why? Because I said so.
That seems strange to me coming from the pro-choice side.
Why not? Because I said so.
I mean, anything that a child does below the age of 18 is going to be some form of force because that parent has legal guardianship over that child.
But I thought you're not for quote forced birth.
So
And I would really hope that you're not for forced abortion.
why?
Do you find it odd, your predicament?
So why is forced birth more important to you than forced abortion?
Why?
Well, now I will tell you why.
Remember, thou shalt not kill.
I wouldn't consider it forced birth, but again, this is your position. You're the one that's against these things. So if someone who's not able to make the decision is going to have someone else make the decision for them, you would agree that they're being forced to do it regardless, right?
Either way, at the end of the day, well, I live in America. I don't know how it applies to other countries, but at the end of the day, no matter what happens here, there's going to be a little bit of force from the parent or guardian. If the child has any sway or any, input in the matter, because again, it's family to family, it's intrapersonal. There's always going to be different situations and scenarios between the families, which is again why I'm pro-choice, because it has nothing to do with my life and everything to do with theirs, right? So it depends on the situation, but either way, it's going to be a forced one way or another because
We agree for once. Good.
the original factor and the original intrinsic way this child got pregnant was out of their hands, because any sex with an adult is illegal and forced. So no matter what comes after that, it is going to be forced because they didn't choose this. Okay? Does that make sense?
So again,
That's his point, sir.
again, just to be clear, you are okay with forcing people to have abortions.
You realize that, don't you?
I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here, that that's your position. You agree with forcing children to have abortions.
No.
Hypocrite.
That's what you just said. You said someone other than them is making the decision for them.
By law.
And whether they agree to this decision or not, they are not the ones that are making the decision.
It is not my decision. Ultimately, I cannot make this decision for other people. No matter what I say.
Because you allowed it to happen.
You're not addressing what I'm talking about here. You told me that a child can't make the decision for themselves and that their parent is going to decide for them. So the parent is choosing whether or not they have an abortion or whether or not they continue pregnancy. Regardless of what the child wants, you're saying it's up to the parent to decide. So
Legally, yes.
So you
allowed it to happen.
agree, well, you're saying that that's how it should be. So you agree that it's okay, then the law should allow parents to force their kids to have abortion or force their kids to remain pregnant and give birth to a live child.
You are not really quite tracking what I'm saying here.
Sure about that?
I don't agree in forced anything. That's the whole
Yes,
point
you
of
do.
being,
You
that's
do.
the whole
You
point-
think that
You allowed it to happen.
that's
the
what the
whole
law
point
should
of
do.
being pro-choice. I don't, if
Okay,
a
great.
child gets
Wait,
pregnant
wait,
and
is
they
it-
want to keep it, good for them. I mean, they're a fucking miracle because I would never, but that's
Okay,
their
so if you get
fucking
pregnant, who should decide whether or not you have an abortion?
if you're under 18,
No,
that's among
you personally.
me. If I were to get pregnant, I would never abort unless I was
But who
dying.
should make that decision?
Me.
You or
me,
somebody else?
Savannah Banana should make that decision.
Okay, so you're saying the person who's
I'm
pregnant should make
28
that
years old.
decision.
I'm 28
Great.
years old.
Yeah, I don't care. You're saying the person who's pregnant should make that decision for themselves. But then when it comes to a child, You're saying someone other than the person who's pregnant.
Female is below the legal age of consent.